Can't wait to finally be in the cabin and be able to bring these videos to you guys in a nice, well-lit, big, beautiful cabin setting here shortly. But we are in the truck here at the farm. We're going to do these outside today, and wouldn't you know, any day that we want it to rain, let's schedule a video and it'll rain. So today raining and about 48 degrees, so we are in the truck bringing this to you. So today we're going to talk about your #1 pre-rut stand and 3 reasons why it shines, why it stands out as that pre-rut stand. One stand as far as your best stand, or multiple setups on your farm, they should all have this same quality standard going into the pre-rut. So the #1 thing that we're going to talk about, not the #1 in the order, but the #1 thing that we're going to chat here about is it has to be downwind of your scrape or your line of travel. That's what makes this time of the year, it's obviously ever so important through the early season, through the entire season, to have those setups so your wind is blowing from your line of travel to you and to the outside, always putting that wind external of the farm, not into the core. This time of the year, though, makes this puts more emphasis on that. And the reason that it puts more emphasis on it is because if you are hunting a promoted line of travel, like I design and I help folks build and understand, that promoted line of travel is built by initially built by your focal points, which are your vertical licking branches. Those licking branches are in the line of travel. So what you want to make sure is you have to be downwind of that, because the bucks are going to start frequenting downwind of those as well. So the first couple days of this, they will have time to go and start checking and opening these scrapes up underneath them, and they really spend time there. Within about a week after your pre-rut starts, what you're going to find is they don't stop at those locations very long at all. And what you're going to find is the further that goes past the pre-rut into the rut, they don't hardly ever stop at them at all. So you'll start getting a loss maybe of some number of pictures that you were getting before, and the reason for that is they might be going behind your cameras, meaning that they're downwind of the scrape. That scrape is so important. It's a information station, like I've always referred to them as. That is your all of that scent, all of the deer. That's what this time of the year, that's why we drive that home, not having them 5 foot up in the air. It not having the mature buck is the only one contacting and leaving that information with it are on there. Is the reason for that is this time of the year, it's all built going into the pre-rut. If you have does, you have fawns, you have immature bucks, mature bucks, they're all leaving that scent on that stick. Then obviously it's pre-charged going into this time of the year. Now notice that I said on the stick, not the scrape itself. Huge misconception in the world that my scrape, if you don't have a camera on it, let's say you go into a public land setting and, well, he's not using the scrape shut down, and yeah, there's a track or two in it, but they're not using it, so folks move to the more active scrapes. So what I have found over the years multiple times, and as you guys know, a lot of these videos have the B-roll, if you will, or the video or the photos on these scrapes, these licking branches that we hang, for that reason. A lot of that scrape is never opened up. I had this question the other day from a client that we got on this topic, and I would venture to say, out of 20,000 plus trail camera pictures and videos a year that I get, I'm realistically feel pretty confident to tell you that probably 100 of those or less, 100 of them or less, out of all the total of all of them that we collect, probably 100 of them actually show the buck working the scrape. So that is not your information station. Your information is on that licking branch, which makes that so important to keep it scent free. No additives, no preservatives, no no sprays, no the latest and greatest gel or whatever the fact is. I like to leave that untouched. So keep that in mind. That's the scrape. The bucks will start frequenting that down. They cannot get that wind they can't get that scent unless they're behind it. So like we said, they come down your transition. If they're cruising and they've got multiple of these to check, your farm is not, unless it's a large acreage, it's not the only farm that they're doing this on day in, day out this time of the year. So they are on the move, which makes them very, very vulnerable, which sets up these high success rates going into the pre-rut here. So they're downwinding that. So what you can do to get them to focus them out, so they're traveling down, they might be hitting some natural scrapes of theirs along the way, inside or outside of the transition. They get to your licking branch, the camera's on there, obviously. We are trying to charge that area to get the most out of it. They come down behind it to keep them out in front of it or at it. What you can do is, you have to be cautious about this, but you can drop trees from the stand out towards that. Make sure that they're lopped, and it's just it's not a potential bedding area, that you're not going to come walking into the stand and there's deer, does, or bucks bedded right at the foot of the stand. So lay the tree down, lop it every 4 to 5 feet. Make sure when it snows or when it settles that the tree is down, so there's not a lot of bedding value to it. But it's structure, it's a diversion. Take that right out, leave it, about 15-20 foot shy of the licking branch, so they don't feel, pinch going there. That keeps them closer to it, and you'll find that just that alone, whether that's, it might be a line of switchgrass, it might be it might be a downed tree like we spoke of, something to keep them out there so they're always in front of the stand. You can obviously do that same thing behind your stand. Cut the trees down, make that wall of debris. Like we talk, your access, don't parallel or don't perpendicular, put your debris off your access trails, run it parallel, and that's the reason. All of it's focused, so they have to go out and around, and they're out in front of the stand. Picture reasons, and you want them to use that scrape more. So they're going to start downwind setting that. That's why these stand locations have to be on the downwind side of the scrape, unless it's a leeward stand. A leeward stand, like I said, it's about as rare or more rare as a buck using the scrape, right? A leeward stand, AM leeward stand in ridge country. Don't try to pull off a leeward stand in anything less than like a 30-degree incline, because you are going to get busted. It took me years to trust the wind and the thermals together on a leeward stand, but I'm here to tell you, it's the most powerful. It's one of the most powerful sits in a stand that you might have all year. You might only get to hunt it once or twice. You might only have 1 or 2 of them on all your properties put together, but when you have them, it's powerful. And the reason for that is, in a normal situation, the wind is coming from the line of travel to you in your face, right? That's, keep the wind in your favor. Leeward situation, that's not the object. The object is to make them think that the wind is in their favor. In other words, you cross the line of travel on a morning sit, you go above the line of travel, the wind is dumping down, they think the wind is dumping down onto that, so they're getting that information as they travel. They're hitting that wind is hitting them at the side of their face as they travel from above. The deal is, your thermals are raising and you're pushing the wind over top of their head. Huge, powerful tool this time of the year. But like I said, use caution. If you got questions about it, is it the perfect leeward stand? Is it not? Reach out, because they're powerful, but you can really mess something up this time of the year. If you're not sure, run with a PM situation on it, not an AM. If you can get in there on an AM situation where your access is above the line of travel to begin with, your property line, and then you come down into a stand and your line of travel or your bench, your cruising area, your licking branch is all below the stand. Obviously, you're in the chips. You don't have to cut the line of travel. You can hunt it in the morning. So look for those opportunities, but that's what you want. That are the things that should jump out on a #1 stand location as far as when we're talking about the wind at the location. The number 2 thing that we're going to chat about is the behind the does. A buck cruising corridor is what I refer to them as to my clients when I set them up. So you've got your food plot, you've got your doe bedding established, and then 30 yards, I like to keep them buck cruising corridors about 30 yards behind the doe bedding areas. They come down through, funnel that all in, use your structure, use your contour, whatever that you have to do, bring those there to an information station before. And what you're going to find is, if you're in that stand location, make sure that you're in the stand. You can shoot 27 yards, 25, 20, 25, 27 yards to the licking branch itself, and then trim that shooting that shooting lane out past the licking branch another 10 to 15 yards, your effective range. If you can shoot 40-50 yards, have a 40-50 yard shooting lane out past behind that licking branch. And the reason is because, like we talked in number 1, they're going to be cruising it. And if that wind, in that situation, it's got to be a crosswind, because obviously it's not going to be coming from the licking branch to them. It has to be coming from the does to them. So you've got to hunt it on that quarterly wind. So instead of it, hunting it on a direct south wind, let's say, that blows right at it, you might be hunting it on like a northeast wind or a northwest wind, transferring your scent one way or the other. But as they access into it, the wind is quartering at the side of their face, and they think they're in charge. So always promote, if you're on public ground, find your food sources, get behind the food source. In other words, get behind your doe bedding, as you're going to find success. Public ground is tricky, though. You have to be able to watch the access. How do you get in there? Because most folks do is they go in too far. So what happens is you walk, a mile in, and that last 300 yards or 400 yards that you're hunting, then you get to where your stand location is, you turn around, you start hunting the movement back. In other words, you're sitting in your stand watching what you've just went through. Make sure you stop that, 100 yards with a gun, 50 yards with a bow. You're stopping that distance short, and you're hunting into that movement. Don't cross it. Same theory as promoting a line of travel, building a line of travel, opening up a transition area on private ground. And the number 3 thing, probably the most powerful thing, guys, that defines this set, especially a morning set. PM sets on these can be very productive too, but number 3 is looking over a water hole, a water source. This time of the year, what you're going to find is, what I find is, I've got a lot of pictures, not a lot, but a good amount going through summer. Maybe you're going to get a dry spell in the summer where you get some good pictures on your water holes. They get used to the water holes. Your licking branches are there, and they start frequenting that. They know it's there. What happens is, all of a sudden, you kind of get this lull effect, right? It gets this where they're not using it a lot. They're hitting it maybe just during the night. When the pre-rut starts, the best way in the world to know that the pre-rut in your area, on your farm, is starting, is that activity on that water hole. Whether it's a water hole scrape combination, but if it's just a water hole, that activity goes through the roof. Huge deal. So when that starts happening, obviously your cameras are there giving you that information. It's time to go. It's go time. It's time to figure the wind out, figure the access, make sure that you're in there on those water sources. Make sure that your water sources are, we're full, like we say. I like to fill them in August to make sure that they're full, and then when we get into September and October, they are, nature's taking care of them. The good Lord is filling them up for us daily, or every couple of days with rain or the moisture. But what happens is, them bucks are on their feet. They're cruising. They're doing all this that we just talked through about 1 and 2. They're on their feet. They're way more active, but they've got the heavy coat on. It doesn't matter where you're at in the whitetail world, they put a fall coat on. And in the whitetail range, they're putting that fall coat on. And when they put that coat on, it's just like us putting 2 or 3 layers of wool on. And instead of walking just to your stand, making 3 laps around the entire farm before you go to the stand, you're going to be hot. What that needs to be is those water holes. So take into consideration, if you got a water hole that is working, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't in the morning, it's not in the right spot. If it's not like a holy crap, this water hole is the pinnacle of the movement in the morning, you're not in the right spot. And the reason that you're probably not in the right spot is it has to be between dry bedding, going back to dry bedding. Now, when we say dry bedding, do you mean obviously your food source? Your deer are coming back off your food, and they're coming back towards bedding. Your does aren't going very far, hopefully. They're hanging up in that first 75 to 100 yards, promoted bedding or bedding area, the correct habitat nearest the food. Your bucks are then behind them. Their bucks are going to find the next, the next secluded area behind it. When we say dry, we don't mean that it's dry. Yes, it's nice to be up on, if you're in swamp country like in Michigan, you find these islands, and they don't like to bed. They won't bed in complete wet swamp in the water. They'll find a high spot 2-foot mound, 6-inch mound, whatever that is. They'll bed in it if it's dry. That's not the meaning of dry bedding. Dry bedding means that I reference to it as 5 and 3. It's a good point to remember, 5 and 3. Deer in general feed 5 times in a 24-hour period, up to 5 times. Mainly it's 5 times. So 5 times in a 24-hour period, 3 of which are internal of their bedding areas. So if it's three feedings internal of a bedding area, that is dry. All of the material that they're eating, you know, unless there's some milfoil or Asian milfoil in swamp country, or, you know, something low like that, that's a green source, which doesn't happen very often. But it's usually dry mast. In other words, it's acorns, it's woody browse, it's shrub tips. It's all dry mast. And what happens is it fills them up all day long. It meets those requirements, but it's dry matter. So when you're saying water is a huge tool at the last step before they go back to bed in the morning, they're going and getting a drink of water because they've been out running all night long. They need that water source to get. They're like an athlete, you know. They need to get that water source put back into their body. They go to bed. In the evening, it's a huge tool because, you know, now they're in there they have been eating this dry mass all day long. So 5 times, 3 of which are dry mass. Now they're going out, which the importance of food kind of dwindles out here as we go into the rut for the bucks. But it's dry matter that they're eating. They need a drink. So before they start their evening, or they're cruising during the afternoon, or they're cruising during the night, they're going to need a good fresh drink of water. That source is the pinnacle. It could make or break your success this time of the year, the pre-rut. So 3 points, 1 through 3 listed there. Probably the most important, or probably the most not important, but the most attractive one is the water source. But all 3 of them give you an idea why this is so important to set this line to travel, to make these pre-rut stands. If you can check the boxes on all 3 of these topics that we touched on, you are probably in the number 1 best stand to be on your property, or multiple stand locations that you've set up on your property for the pre-rut.